Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Pasco Chamber's annual meeting, our Sunshine Luncheon. Thank you so much for attending today. Sorry we didn't deliver on the sunshine outside, but with all your cheery, smiley faces, it's like having sunshine in here. So I appreciate you coming out and supporting the Pasco Chamber throughout today, but obviously as members as well too. It doesn't run without your support. And so dinner or lunch will be coming out soon. We kind of threw a curveball at you today by having it plated, but that should be coming out soon. But before we get started with that, I'd like to invite you to please join me with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may have a seat. I want to thank GISA for being our annual luncheon sponsor once again. They've been a great community partner throughout the Tri-Cities and as well as a stupendous partner with the Pasco Chamber as well too. I've been with the Pasco Chamber now since 2011, and GISA has always been hand in hand in working with us on that. So please give GISA a round of applause for being today's luncheon sponsor. Also want to take a moment to introduce elected officials and their representatives that joined us here today. From Congressman Dan Newhouse's office, we have Jamie Daniels. Jamie, if you could stand up and let's give her a round of applause, please. Franklin County Commissioner Brad Peck, right over there. Pasco City Council Member David Milne. Dave, there he is. I had the pleasure of, well, pleasure may not be the right word, but David and I were part of the Pepper Gauntlet at the Fiery Foods Festival on Saturday. So needless to say, I didn't win. I know that David didn't win, but I did make mention, you know, that's a good politician. He'll do anything it takes to get reelected. So he's down there, and I can tell you, I wasn't feeling good the next day. So and he went at least a round past me. So thanks, Dave, for doing that, and actually for all the folks that participated in the Fiery Foods Festival and the Pepper Gauntlet. But I think that's a one-time affair for me. So moving on down from the Franklin PUD, Commissioners Stu Nelson and Bill Gordon. Right there. And with the Port of Pasco, Commissioner Jim Clinworth. Right here. I think I covered it all. Thank you so much for your attendance. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the Pasco Chamber presidents that have joined us here today. And I'll just go ahead and read their names. When I read your names, please stand up, and then we'll acknowledge you after I announce everyone. So Dennis Giese with John L. Scott, Ryan Brault with Edward Jones, Daryl Ebert with the Tri-City Dust Devils, Janice Hastings, Columbia Basin Paper and Supply, Julie Killian with Wheatland Bank, Kevin Williams with IFC Insurance. I thought I saw Kevin. Oh, there's Kevin. And last, but of course not least, I'm hoping I didn't overlook anyone, but of course it's Ed Ray, who is, I like to call the godfather of the Pasco Chamber, and a lot of other folks do that. So please give them a round of applause for their attendance today. I do have a little bit of update, I guess, at our annual meeting from myself that I want to share with everyone here. Just like every previous year, it seems like every year that we've been doing this, and as the Pasco Chamber is getting more and more involved, that we're doing more stuff, and this last year is no exception to that. You know, the Pasco Chamber was first founded in 1912 in downtown Pasco, so we've had a long run and a long commitment to this area. Kind of as a side note, membership in 1912, membership dues were $50 a year. So be thankful we've kept your dues down, because that translates in terms of inflation, I think about $3,000 or $4,000 a year. So, but they had a vision of what Pasco could be and what it had, and I think we're still carrying on that mission. I think there's some successes that the previous decades of leaders of Pasco have been able to put together and see what our community has become today. I think that our founders in 1912 would be smitten with where we are today, and probably, I think, a little bit surprised as well too. And the nice thing is, where we're standing here over 100 years from now, I think we'll be surprised what Pasco is, but we have that guiding sort of pathway in front of us. And the Pasco Chamber, with the leadership of the board of directors, is willing to take on that mission and role. Among some of those items that we take on every year, I do want to highlight just a few of those. And a lot of them are community events like Asparagus Fest, where we highlight and have fun, but we highlight an important commodity here in this area, where we had over 1,500 folks come and sample asparagus. There's different ways of preparing asparagus. I didn't think there was, but there are multiple ways. And it always helps having band and beer too. But we had over 1,500 folks come out to that. We have our annual golf tournament every year at Sun Willows, which is always good as a fundraiser for our chamber and our charities. We'll also do sponsor some other things throughout the year, such as we're a peak partner with New Horizons. We sponsor the Hay King Award. We also have scholarships that we give out during the Eastern Washington Ag Expo. We call those the Lyle Holt Scholarships, as well as in conjunction with the Ag Hall of Fame, where we have our Cultivating Cultivating Our Future grants. For the past couple years, I think total since we've done the Cultivating Our Future grants, the ag community, through our help, has granted out over $35,000 in that, and that's all actually from the folks that want to help see education, ag education throughout our area, and see the importance of that. A new up-and-coming event where I think we'll see even more growth out of is our crawdad boil. It's down at Osprey Point, near the Port of Pasco. This past July, we sold out, and so I think that's indicative of where we're going to be moving down the road. So I call them crawdads. Those from the south call them crayfish, crawfish. But so that's a kind of a humorous sort of banter we have back and forth. But we had over 325 people down for that. They're locally sourced crawdads as well too, from the Snake River, and so we want to keep that. We went over 500 pounds, and I think we're going to have to buy 1,000 pounds next year. Hopefully the commercial fishery can support that. And then just this past couple weekends ago, you might have heard we had a little event over at Columbia Park called Riverfest. This past year we had over 4,000 people participate in that. It's an opportunity for the community to kind of get engaged with learning more about our river system and our hydropower system. We had over 70 different exhibitors there that were telling their story of how the river system impacts their business or livelihood or what drives our economy. And it was fun. The children had ample hands-on activities to take part of. I think parents had a chance to maybe take a step back and relax while the kids were running around, but had a chance to learn about what this hydropower system has done for our region in the Northwest. And we do want to continue to have this event year over year. I think we've kind of caught lightning in a bottle with this, and the issue on the lower Snake River dams and their removal will not go away. So this is just one opportunity for us to lend support to the cause of keeping the lower Snake River dams in place, but then educating the reason why it's so important to our carbon-free energy portfolio that we're leading the nation in here in the Northwest. And looking into the future, starting next year as well too, we've just taken on a new study with our partners WSU, Pullman, and Soul Case Management on a Latino workforce study. You'll be hearing some more information on that, and we'll be looking for some companies that might want to get involved with that. It's been an issue that Rolando and our board has been working on for a little bit, of how we can make this study take place, which would be a first of its kind study. But with the help of Soul and WSU, we're going to be launching this, which will hopefully be a first part of a much larger, more dynamic study down the road. So keep your eyes out for that. And also, the Pasco Chamber is also in conversations. Well, we're beyond conversations, but we're looking to launch our healthcare plan again. If you recall, I think it was about 5, 6, 7 years ago, we had a healthcare plan through Life Bank that the rules kind of changed on us, and so we weren't able to proceed forward with that. Well, the healthcare climate and the healthcare industry is changing, and so we're able to hopefully jump on board with that and offer some great healthcare choices for our member businesses as well too. So you'll be seeing some more information on that down the road. And of course, all this wouldn't happen if it wasn't for our board members at the Pasco Chamber of Commerce dedicating their time and providing their leadership. With that, please help me give them a thank you by giving our board of directors a round of applause. So those that are current board members, please stand up and we'll go ahead and acknowledge you. Thank you. Thank you so much for your commitment, and also for the commitment of the great staff that we have at the Pasco Chamber. Allie, if you can wave. I know that Marilyn had to leave, and Ellie Neff as well too have been, there's Ellie right over there, have been great additions to the Pasco Chamber, and really have been taking on all the responsibilities that's needed as we're growing and doing more events. They're getting busier and busier too. So please give them a round of applause for all their help. So that concludes my brief, somewhat brief remarks. I'd like to invite Tara Wiswall, our outgoing 2018-19 president, to take us through the rest of the program. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone. Now I'd like to bring up Nikki Torres with GISA Credit Union as our premier sponsor today. Please give her a round of applause.
Thank you so much. My hands are kind of wet. Gotta lower this because I'm not as tall. There we go. Well, thank you very much. My name is Nikki Torres, and I'm with GISA Credit Union as well, as you already heard. For those of you who don't know, GISA Credit Union has been serving members since 1953. We literally started in a shoebox, and along the way, we've added products and services to best serve our members. Everything from checking accounts that pay you interest to implementing a full-service commercial team, which lends funds to many entrepreneurs and businesses, ultimately supporting economic development in the communities we serve. Our expansion has taken us from Tri-Cities to Walla Walla, Wenatchee, Moses Lake, Yakima, and Spokane. And now our journey has led us to become the second largest credit union in the state. As you may have heard, we have merged with Inspirus Credit Union, which is headquartered in Tukwila. And together as a combined organization, we will continue to offer our members great rates, access to quality products and services, and more access to branches throughout the state of Washington. This is a true collaborative partnership. We're two financially sound organizations committed to our members and the community. This collaboration is exciting because we truly share similar values, philosophies, and a strong commitment to education and the community. And that's not going to change. We'll both continue to honor the values that guide us. In fact, I'm happy to share that just a few weeks ago, GISA awarded our school partners over $155,000 to support student programs. And that's here locally, to our school districts here locally. These funds are a direct representation of our members' support as they elect to participate in our high school co-branded card program. This program grows every year, and to date, we've donated over $300,000. How many of you have a co-branded GISA card? That's awesome to see. And we'd definitely love to see more hands. Because remember, it doesn't come out of your pockets, it comes out of GISA. So please keep that in mind, and you're supporting our local schools. So this is another example of our strong commitment to community and education. While some things have changed since we began in 1953, what hasn't changed is keeping the community, our members' best interest, and service at the heart of everything we do. The GISA team strives each and every day to give our members the best because we believe that is what they deserve. All of our staff brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise unmatched here in the Tri-Cities. Our team is really what makes GISA stand out. And as you've seen, we have 3 tables here of GISA members, staff members. I would invite you all to visit with GISA staff here and be sure to stop by any of our branches to meet the rest of our fantastic team. I'll conclude with a thank you to Colin and his team who helped organize this event. I'd also like to thank the Chamber and their volunteers for their dedication in helping the business community grow, especially here in Pasco. Thank you again all for attending. Enjoy your luncheon.
Served as the director of the Governor's Trade Council in Washington State. Mr. Bryant is a graduate of Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service, where he concentrated his studies on Asia and Latin America. Please give a warm welcome to Bill Bryant.
Well, I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to come back and talk to you. I've done it a few times over the last few years, and I've always had a great time with you, and I really jumped at the chance when Colin called and said, would I be willing, to ask me if I'd be willing to come over and chat with you about international trade and agriculture and what's going on right now in the trade and agricultural environment. And I can tell you there's a lot going on right now on trade and agriculture. When I talk to groups, and you know, particularly on this side of the pass, it's less important on the other side of the pass. I'm constantly harping on this. But across the state, I don't think people fully appreciate how important agriculture is to our state's economy. Particularly the local economy, yes, but to our overall state's economy. Agriculture, when you start looking in terms of its employment, is pretty much equal to the technology sector in Washington State. Now, we hear about tech all the time, but the employment in agriculture is 160,000. 160,000 people in Washington State are directly related to agricultural production. To put that in perspective, the combined employment of Boeing, Microsoft, and Amazon is about the same. So when you're looking at the collective importance of agriculture to Washington State's economy, it's right up there with Boeing, Microsoft, and Amazon. And when we put food processing on top of that, that's just not the raw commodities, but actually processing, it becomes even more important to our state's economy, almost doubling the economic value. And the Tri-Cities, as you all know, is one of the hubs of food processing. Within just a few miles of here, we have over 100 companies that are directly related to the processing of food and beverages. And to combine all this, not only do we have agriculture and food processing, but we have that sector which is incredibly dependent upon trade. It's not necessarily true in every agricultural community around the country. A lot of them produce agricultural goods and they're sold basically within the United States or maybe Canada. But here, we're producing a lot. It's a huge part of our state's economy, and we're exporting, if not most, a heck of a lot of it. As was mentioned in the introduction, I got started in the agricultural sector in 1985. I lived in Yakima, and I was hired to eliminate all of the trade barriers confronting the apple industry in Washington State. And the reason was, in 1985, so anyone guess what the size of the crop was in 1985? The apple crop? 35 million boxes. The thing was, in 1985, they had a 35 million box crop, and they were staring in a few years at over 50 million boxes. They knew they had the trees in the ground to produce over 50 million boxes, and they had no idea how they were going to profitably market 50 million boxes of apples because they had never done it. At that time, we probably exported, out of that 35 million, we probably exported about 5 million boxes of apples, mostly to Canada and a little bit to Europe and some to Taiwan. And I was hired to open up new export markets around the world so that we wouldn't just be selling 35 million, but we could export more and move this 50 million box crop. 20-some years later, or more than 20-some years later, huh? Oh, wow. A few years later, we will probably this year, I'm not sure where the crop is, but let's say it's around 120 million, not 50. And we will export 30 to 40% of that crop. We will export more this coming year than we grew in 1985. We will export probably about 10 million boxes to Mexico, maybe more if everything doesn't go crazy on us with Mexico. We'll export over 10 million boxes. That's more than we exported to the entire world a few years ago. And as the agricultural sector since the 1980s has grown in Washington State, so has its dependence on trade. And while I gave you an example on apples, I could run through similar examples on hops, on frozen fries and D-high, on the potato sector, on wheat, on cherries, any number of crops that we grow here. We're not only growing them, we're not only adding value through processing, but then we're exporting them all the way around the world. And those jobs that I talked about in the very beginning depend not just on the production, but on our ability to export those year after year all around the world. And that's why all of the trade uncertainty and the trade war chatter that we hear about now is not just a concern nationally, and it's not just a concern to Washington State's economy, but it's definitely a concern right here in the Tri-Cities and in the Columbia Valley, where we have so much export-oriented agriculture and so much of it that's going to be shipped abroad. There are three problems that's created by this odd trade war environment that we're in. The first is it just creates uncertainty. And if you're exporting commodities, particularly perishable commodities, the last thing you want is uncertainty. You want to be able to predict what the market is going to be like 6 or 8 months from now with some assurance that you're going to be pretty close. And your customers are going to want to know what your supply is likely to be and about how much it's going to cost. You inject a lot of uncertainty in it, and it gets very scary very quickly. And we have a lot of uncertainty. Coming into 2016, the Obama administration had wrapped up the negotiation of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP. And TPP was supposed to be, for Asia, what NATO is to Europe. NATO is a military alliance, and at the time we negotiated it, to isolate the Soviet Union. The Trans-Pacific Partnership was an economic agreement to isolate China. It was pulling all of the Asian countries together in an economic relationship with us to isolate China. And very quickly, the United States pulled out of the TPP. Now, the rest of the country said, well, you know, thanks for pulling us all together and negotiating this. And by the way, it was a pretty good idea. And we've just spent years and years negotiating it. So if you're going to leave, that's fine, but we're going to continue it. And so what has happened is we have negotiated this agreement that we are no longer a part of. So not only have we got an agreement now that to some extent has isolated China, but our withdrawal from Asia has also isolated us from Asia. And we're losing markets as a result. Because the Canadians are in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The Chileans are in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The Australians and the New Zealanders. And they now all have trade preferences that we don't have anymore because we've voluntarily withdrawn. And so trying to figure out, how you're going to be shipping into Japan or Taiwan when now you're competing with countries like Australia and New Zealand, and they've got preferences that you don't have, it creates a very uncertain situation. Our whole relationship, now that we've not only withdrawn from Asia, you'd think we'd really want to consolidate North America, but our relationship with Canada and Mexico right now are very uncertain. The president decided that we wanted to totally renegotiate NAFTA because it was the worst agreement in the history of the world. I'm a little biased because I helped negotiate some of the agricultural sections of NAFTA. I don't think it's the worst agreement. I think it was 20-some years old and needed to be updated. There were things in it that we didn't even contemplate when we negotiated it, like the internet or biotechnology and agriculture. And those clearly needed to be updated. And we also had some issues that were just too difficult to deal with 20-some years ago and needed to be dealt with, like dairy. But we could have probably updated it without all of the drama. Because what we have now are new chapters of the old NAFTA agreement on biotechnology and on some pharmaceuticals and on the internet, and we've cleaned up a little bit on dairy. But essentially what we have is NAFTA plus, wait for it, the chapters from the Trans-Pacific Partnership on those new things. So we've taken the chapters that we, on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, put them in NAFTA, called NAFTA USMCA, but we're not even in the Trans-Pacific Partnership anymore. All of that's making your customers going, what's going on here? And that creates uncertainty. We're in a Europe is another important market for a lot of our products, and right now we are threatening new tariffs on Europe because of imports of automobiles, that the president does not like the number of automobiles we're importing and thinks that it's driving out American automobile jobs. Here's the reality about the American automobile industry. At its height in the 1970s, the automobile industry in the United States employed about 1.2 million people. As of last year, I haven't checked it this year, but last year it was employing about 950,000 people. Those 220-some thousand people who have lost their jobs since the 1970s did not lose it because of trade. They lost it because of automation. And that's going to continue to move forward. We're going to continue to automate a lot of our heavy manufacturing. So if we try and if we think the solution is blaming other countries, we're going to be ignoring the real cause of it, which is automation. And we need to be thinking about how we deal with the real problem as opposed to picking out other enemies and in the process creating problems for our agricultural exports. India is an emerging market. I've been in India twice this year already. I am more bullish on India when it comes to agricultural exports than I am China. And yet, we're continuing to poke and prod and create some tariff issues there, which are beginning to cause the Indians to say, well, then maybe it shouldn't be the United States. Maybe we should begin talking more with Chile and Australia and New Zealand as being our suppliers. And then finally, China. And China is the big one. And in this case, the president has picked entirely the right fight that we needed to take on China. They are violations of intellectual property. They're unfair subsidies. A number of their practices were inconsistent with trade agreements we had already negotiated, and we needed to stand up to them. We needed to challenge it. But we needed to do it in a way that was going to succeed. And we needed to have an exit strategy. And my concern is that in the absence of a real thoughtful, consistent policy, we've just created more uncertainty, and that's causing us to lose sales. And that's not theoretical. I don't want to overwhelm you with stats, but it's estimated that just in the last year or so, the market losses for apples in China and India are over 140 million. In cherries, it's about 100 million. I mean, that's real money. If you use 2016 as your benchmark, because of all of this trade uncertainty that I've talked about in Europe and in Asia and in North America and India and in China, wine exports are down about 10%. To China, our exports from wine are down 28%. In de-high potatoes, our exports worldwide are down about 68%. To China, they're down 90%. In frozen fries, they're down 26% worldwide and about 33% to China. Those stats mean we're losing customers. And that's the real concern that I have as somebody who's been working in this sector for decades and has really worked for decades to build up international global markets for agriculture in central Washington. It's not just the short term we've lost some sales this year, although there's real human pain in the loss of those sales. But I'm more concerned about the fact that if this continues to go on much longer, we're going to lose customers. And there's a huge difference between losing a sale and losing a customer for good. Getting these customers back is going to be very tough. And what you have is like Mexico. We used to, not Washington State, but the United States used to own the corn market in Mexico. Mexico is now beginning to look for other sources for corn. We own the soybean market in China. China is now beginning to buy their soybeans from other countries. I was in Chile just a few weeks ago, and I was meeting with one of the major players in the fruit and vegetable industry in Chile, and he said, Bill, I'm going to have to cut our meeting, come a little early, because I'm going to have to cut our meeting short otherwise, because the Vice Minister of Agriculture from China is wanting to come see me. And I was like, yeah, he wants to come see whether or not you're going to be a supplier for what we used to supply. So around the world, people are not just thinking about, okay, we're not going to buy from the United States this year, but when this is all settled, we'll start buying from you again. The real problem here when we talk about the trade environment and how it could affect us here in central Washington is that we have spent years developing personal relationships and building customers and getting those customers. And if over the next 12 to 18 to 24 months, they start finding new suppliers, getting them back could be very, very difficult. So we need this year to resolve a lot of these little trade spats we've put ourselves into, and we need to do it in a way that will preserve the relationships that we have and that will allow us to build on those relationships and continue to export around the world. Otherwise, we're going to be producing a lot of stuff that we're going to have to find homes for. And that's kind of where we were in the 1980s. We succeeded. We don't want to go back to that. We want to keep building upon the foundation that we've had over the last 30 years. Now, I don't want to be all doom and gloom, because actually I am really high on the Tri-Cities. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here. I'm very, very bullish on it. And we can talk about these trade disputes, and I could go into more detail, and we go into Q&A. I'm happy to answer any questions. But at the end of the day, from a lot of our perspective, it is what it is. There's not a whole lot that we can really do about it on a day-to-day basis. This is going to work itself out at an international level, regardless of what we do. But let me leave you with some thoughts about things that we could do and begin doing today, which will really position, I believe, the Tri-Cities economy to be really poised for success in 20 years. Kind of looking back at what the Apple industry did in the 80s, and they're reaping the benefits now. There's some things that we could be doing beyond just agriculture that would really be worthy of those founders in 1912 who looked 100 years out. I don't want to focus on the problems today. Let's look a few decades out. And I think that there are three things that could really help position this community to be even stronger in the next 30 years. And that is taking advantage of the agriculture and the energy and the technology center that the Tri-Cities already is. The first thing that we have got to do is we've got to preserve that agricultural base. Especially if we want to keep this as a food processing hub, we've got to do that. And the most important thing that we can do to keep that agriculture here is to ensure that every state and national climate change strategy includes increased investment in water retention in the Yakima Basin and along the Columbia system. We're still getting the amount of rain and snowpack. I mean, Barbara and I have a ranch up in the Okanagan. Our snowpack year after year is pretty much the same every year. But what we're seeing is the slow melt of that snowpack throughout the summer is not happening anymore. We're watching most of that snowpack disappear over Memorial Day and just blow out through the river and go to the Pacific. If we want to keep agriculture here, and if you're concerned about salmon recovery, we need to be able to capture that water however it falls, whether it's snow or rain, and then slowly release it through the year as if it were melting snow. And if we don't, and the temperature continues to go up 1 or 2 points in this winter and spring, we're not going to have the water we need to grow the food and process it and supply the rest of the world. So, and tell you what, a small investment now is a heck of a lot easier to do than trying to play catch up in 20 or 30 years. So let's make sure that every state and national strategy has aggressive investment in the Columbia River system and in the Yakima Basin water retention. The second point that I'd like us to think about is really taking advantage of all of the assets that the Tri-Cities already has, which are enviable assets. A lot of communities would love to have these. And when I'm talking about the assets, the first one is water. And folks, over the next 20 to 30 years, water is going to become more and more valuable. Canada is going to become the Saudi Arabia of water. Let's make sure that we've got water, let's keep it, but water is a huge asset. We have incredible research capacity here in the Tri-Cities. Whether that's engineering or technology, we have a talent pool that a lot of communities would love to have. We also are poised to be a global hub. So what I'd like to do is kind of take all of this water, this research capacity, this talent pool that we have here in the Tri-Cities, and the fact that we're so located to markets, and let's ensure that the Tri-Cities becomes the, not just national, but global hub for the next generation of nuclear. And that, in my mind, takes on two sub-projects. The first is that we do need to be the national and the international hub for all of the design and assembly of small, medium-sized, small modular reactors. This is a technology that's already here, but some of the research done over in Idaho, except where it's done, they don't have any water, and we're a heck of a lot closer to a lot of the markets. Let's put together a strategy to ensure that when anywhere on the planet you're thinking about small modular reactors, you're thinking about right here in the Tri-Cities. The second part of this, which might sound a little woo-woo, but I do believe that within my lifetime, and I'm 59, we will go to Mars. And if we need to go to Mars and get back in a reasonable period of time, it's going to take some sort of atomic propulsion once you leave Earth's atmosphere. This is happening already. You look at Blue Origin over in Kirkland, Jeff Bezos' private company. This is already being explored on blackboards. Let's make sure that we build the science and the technology hub so that when this really begins to get legs, the next generation of atomic propulsion research is done here in the Tri-Cities. If we begin thinking like the founders of the Chamber did in 1912 about what we want this community to look like 20 and 30 years from now, yeah, we need to be concerned right now about some of the challenges we're dealing with. But sitting around griping about the problems that we've got that we can't take any control over isn't going to move us forward. But if we can work on those two things to ensure that we have the water we need to maintain our food processing and our agricultural base, and if we can ensure that we muster the resources we already have here in the Tri-Cities to be the global hub for modular reactors and atomic propulsion, we will be generating jobs in this community for decades to come. Thank you. Do we have time?
Hi, Gary Blue with Port of Pasco. So, obviously, in this community, we're very big supporters of small modular reactors. We're very big supporters of water storage. We're not the issue of trying to get those things and make them happen. We have a state that a lot of times
Get a good new governor. No, and I'm not saying I'm being a little flip, but it's true. I mean, essentially, we need new leadership that recognizes all of the assets that we've got here. I mean, I really believe what I said about all of these assets exist in the Tri-Cities. We just need to really pull them together and make sure they're part of a statewide strategic plan. Washington State is treading water. It has no strategic plan to deal with, to muster and coordinate all of the resources we have, not just here in the Tri-Cities, but all around Washington State. And I think in the absence of different leadership in Olympia, whether it's at the legislative level or in the governor's mansion, we're going to continue to tread water. That wasn't an announcement.
My comment is this, another thing we need to do for our people in Tri-Cities, it seems to me, is to look at who we're dealing with, and who our trade partners are. I think we would, our business and agriculture, we're going into the trade war with China rather blindly, not knowing that China looks at trade in a way that we don't. For them, trade is an important component of their national security. It's an important component to build up the military might, to build up their own totalitarian system, and anything that jeopardizes that will cause them to rethink trade. And so we therefore have these misunderstandings with China, and it's not going to be for short term, it's going to be long term. So it seems to me that we need to work in a way to do this well, research and analysis, look at the agenda for countries like China compared to the agenda that we have here to decrease our exports and do trade in a more profitable base for us. So it would seem maybe better to look at great trade partners. I mean, let's look at trustworthy, reliable partners. And we have ample number of them, you mentioned, here in Latin America, Mexico, Chile. Right now we have a Venezuelan diaspora in Venezuela, Colombia, that is very, very active. We're also very active in Miami. So would it make sense to caution our growers and farmers here to think carefully about who they're going to trade with, sort of guide them along on maybe a rating basis, according to A5 to Mexico, 0 to China?
Well, if China's willing to buy your stuff, I don't want to put them at 0. I just think you need to be aware of what you're getting into and ensure that you've got a relationship that's going to protect your company. I think if you're shipping agricultural goods, you're in a very different position than if you're shipping a technology product that, as a part of the agreement, they're requiring you to turn over a lot of your intellectual property. And that was part of the problem. That's got to stop. But I do agree, we need to identify which relationships are most important to us. And we need to have, which is not something we do in the United States very well, but particularly with China, we need to have a 25 and a 50-year strategy for the U.S.-Chinese relationship. You can bet the Chinese have a 50 to 100-year strategy on where they want to be with the United States. And as you're pointing out, that goes beyond trade, that goes to military relationships and to how much of our debt they're going to buy, and they know exactly where they want to be. We don't really think beyond the next election very well. And we really need to have a 25 to 50-year strategy with them and identify which of our products we're going to be comfortable selling and what we're going to buy from them. And then, as part of that strategy, I would argue, we bind North America together. I mean, if you look at the water and natural resources of Canada and the agricultural and energy potential of Mexico and the capital and the energy and the agricultural potential of the United States, and you take that and the labor pool in all 3 countries and you bind them together, there is not a country on the planet that could touch us. And we need to make sure that part of a strategy on how you're going to deal with China over the next 50 years means we have a rock-solid relationship within North America. And then, I would argue, tomorrow or this afternoon, as quickly as we can, pick up the phone and say, yeah, we'd like to get back into the Trans-Pacific Partnership, because that's a union of the Asian countries that will help isolate China.
One more question for Bill?
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to move on to the business portion of the meeting for our annual luncheon. I'd like to bring up the outgoing board members. That'd be Dennis Giese, our past president, Katie Copeland with Keller Williams, Jason Jones with Express Employment, and Jolene Johnson, who's not here, unfortunately. Okay. Where's Dennis? Let's do Dennis here. Thank you. All right, Dennis, if you'd come up first. Dennis was our past president, 2017-2018. He served on the Chamber Board since 2013 and has been extremely engaged by chairing the Economic Development Committee, as well as providing outstanding leadership for the Chamber and continuing to devote his time to legislative priorities of the Chamber. Thank you, Dennis. Stay up here for a picture. Stay up here for a picture. All right, Katie, let's do you next. Katie Copeland with Keller Williams. Thank you. Katie has been on the Chamber Board since 2016. She brings to the board great insight and involvement in the Pasco Chamber projects and has been a tireless volunteer for our community events and #1 beer pourer at the Asparagus Festival. Thank you, Katie. Jason Jones with Express Employment. Thank you. Jason has served on the Chamber Board since 2016 and offers a great small business perspective on engaging the membership and has provided the Chamber great staff with his job placement services. So big thank you to Jason. All right. Okay, perfect. All right, thank you very much. Big thank you. Now we're going to do the installation of our new board members. We'd like to invite the incoming board members to come to the stage. Daryl Ebert with the Tri-City Dust Devils, Nick Punch with Baker Boyer Bank, Rolando Rodriguez with Soul Case Management, Rob DiPiazza with Hometown Values Magazine, and Shane Edinger with Pasco School District. Please come up. Come on up. Yeah, we're going to stand up here. All right. I'm going to see if I can stand over here. All right, come on over. We've got to get one more on here. All right. I get to read our charge to the board members as officers. You are called to be the leaders of this chamber, promoting the Pasco Chamber as the front door for tens of thousands of individuals and businesses representing business to agriculture to education in our community. You will be called on to make sacrifices of your time, creative energy, resources, and money, and the requirements for serving this group may come at inconvenient times. That is true. You may be called upon to stretch all of your present problem-solving and conflict resolution skills, and you do not assume your present commitment lightly. To do a good job will require all that is in you. If you agree to this, will you please answer, I will?
I will.
All right, thank you. Big round of applause for our new board members. Thank you very much. Hold on. Okay, we now have a charge to the general membership, you all. To you, the membership, who have chosen these individuals as your leaders, you have given them an important job, an impossible job without your help and support. Express your appreciation to your leaders often. They are serving a great sacrifice to your benefit. It is up to you to be positively involved and assume responsibility for helping your fellow members. To the membership, please indicate your support by saying "we do" as an indication that this board has your full support and assistance. We do. Thank you. Last, I get to deliver my outgoing speech as president. I'd like to say thank you, first of all, for allowing me to have this opportunity and giving me the time with the chamber that I've had. Community was the word that when I met with Colin that I wanted to focus on when I took over the presidency last year. This is a special body of individuals and businesses that has existed for, like we said, over 100 years. We have an opportunity and a responsibility to make sure that Pasco and the greater Franklin County area know that we care. We care about a healthy and vibrant business community, we care about agriculture, and we care about the education of our youth and beyond. Our partnership with Soul Case Management and the Latino Workforce Study Program will do that. We'll let people know that we care. Our monthly membership luncheons, where we recognized our valuable leaders like Matt Watkins and learn more about recycling from Derek Dietrich of BDI, lets people know we care. Championing a defined contribution healthcare option for our members and their employees will do that as well. We'll let people know we care. Becoming a peak partner with New Horizons High School holds a special part in my heart. Supporting the students and staff in various ways like donating business attire for interviews and handing out 150 La Gelpita ice cream cones at as we send them off for summer break, let them know we care. Finding a scaffolding for an art project and hiring their FFA group to our Ag Hall of Fame centerpieces, let them know we care. Being vocal and educative in a family-friendly environment about why our rivers and hydroelectric system are so important are so vitally important, we'll do that as well. Hopefully generations to come will remember what they learned at the salmon maze or the boat races and what they experienced at the Riverfest and protect our dams long after many of us in this room are long gone. Riverfest will do that. It'll let people know we care. Celebrating the pioneers of our agricultural community through the Ag Hall of Fame and our sponsorship for the next generation of farmers and ranchers through the Lyle Holt Scholarship, the Cultivating Our Futures Grant, and the YQCA program at the Eastern Washington Ag Expo, let people know we care. These are just some of the many community-focused areas of the Pasco Chamber, and I want to leave this podium asking you, the membership, to get involved. Tell the Chamber what you like, but maybe more importantly, what you don't like and what you'd like to see different. Sorry. Volunteer. Become a community member or sponsor a luncheon. Give your thoughts and ideas so that others can continue on this special body of people. And with that community member involvement speech, I'd like to welcome up Joe Roach, who has been a member of this Pasco community for a very long time, and I am very excited to hand over this position to him. Joe's going to be your 2019-2020 Pasco Chamber President. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks, Tara. Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much, Tara, for serving last year and up till today. Great speech. Thanks, Colin and the board for trusting in me for this year. Thanks for my little fan club that will attend one lunch. Thank you for the Tegesa Credit Union as our title sponsor and all the table sponsors. Thank you, Mr. Bryant, for the keynote speech. It was very informative, and especially about the small modular reactors. Can't agree more. So, with that,
You get to draw the winner for the door prize.
oh, my first duty.
First duty is
Yeah.
president.
Andy Herrera with Affordable Handyman Services. That's it? All right. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Thank you. So that concludes our luncheon. Please have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next month here at the Red Lion. Thanks to Red Lion for a great job with our meal today.